So after the release of Super Console X, there are so many of these game boxes out there. And we are calling them game boxes because they are boxes playing games. But that's basically what the Chinese did. They released a kind of a line that has called the game box. Yeah, kind of weird. So what are we going to get? Yeah, sometimes we do get more of the same when it comes to the S905 chip. For the people who didn't know, like it's kind of an old school Android, like say chipset they're using every single time in combination with MELIC. But sometimes we can be very surprised what we're going to get in the end. Especially when it comes to the custom firmware, because that is something they did change out in the last couple of years, where they started as just using MELIC. They are just modifying it now and making it unique and run it sometimes better on older boxes. So that's quite interesting what we're going to look at today. But first, let's grab one from the pile and let's take a close look at it. The first game box we're going to take a close look at is this dual system game box that had the option to use Android. Basically, some of them do have it, some doesn't, but this one does have. So let's take a close look at this one first to see what are we going to get. What are we going to get? So this thing looks familiar. It looks like a Super Console X, but it is not like a Super Console X. It's slightly different. It feels already quite heavy compared with the Super Console X. It had this rubber coating. It comes with an on-and-off switch, stuff like that. But they called also the Gamebox G7. So you can see like there are a lot of different versions out there. And when it comes to functionalities, it still has two USB ports. It comes with an RJ45, HD, AV out, NTF card. And then we're going to get the input for the 12 volt. Or they always say like TF card, but we know what I wanted to say. It's a micro SD card. And this time we're going to get a 128 gigabyte. So I'm curious, what are we going to get with this device? Or what can we find in the inside? So inside we're going to get one dongle, and this is the configuration of one dongle and two controllers. So we're going to get two wireless controllers, and yeah, it's always the question, what are you going to get with these things? They don't have rumble function, they just work on two AAA batteries, have an on and off switch. Over here we do have the indication for player 1 and player 2. Sometimes it's just in LED and mode. And overall, like the quality, it feels okay. It is not the same quality like your original PlayStation 2 controller. They don't smell chemical for once. Okay, so here we're going to get a power supply. The power supply isn't 12 volts, and we're going to get a remote because it's dual boot, so we can use it like an Android box. HDMI cable, and of course the toilet paper manual. Okay, wait. What the hell? Why does this thing look like... Oh, they just slapped a manual inside of this thing, in this box. More like, you got manual? Figure it out yourself. And even I'm getting this Super Console X vibe with this new G7 box. Still there are some differences. To begin with, the box itself doesn't look like a one-on-one clone at all. No, so there are some differences over here. So to begin with, this thing has like a rubber coating. I really hate it. This is more like the cheap plastic shell. Another thing is we're going to do a weight comparison because I'm curious, like this thing feels so much heavier. Another thing is like when it comes to the control ports, here we're going to get differences. Here you can see like they moved off the CF or the SD card function. And this means simply that there's a different mainboard inside. So I'm curious also like when it comes to the performance, what we can do with this thing. The Super Console X on top is slightly slimmer. This is more like a bulky case. But let's do a weight comparison. Alright, so the Super Console X weighs 107 grams. And this weighs 147 grams. See, I told you this thing is freaking heavier. I can feel it with the wicked sense. So the device itself has a dual boot, so let's take a close look at that. The first time you boot it up, you need to configure everything, your Wi-Fi or your Ethernet, the time and date, stuff like that. But then overall, when you're going to get booted up, this is what you're going to get. It's working on Android version 9.1. It's not the latest version, so let's go to the settings and I will show you what I mean. So nowadays, when we're making this video, we're having like Android 11 already, but this is a 9.1. Better than the Super Console X because those were running on Android 4. Freaking prehistoric. We can still play some Netflix, but take consideration these boxes are rooted, so sadly we can't play in full HD. Beside that, I still had some issues with my HDMI port, so I needed to rectify that. Alright, so booting up into YouTube, basically you can't watch all of your favorite content, but I noticed there are some limitations when it comes to the playback of 4K. Because they are forced to put it in 1080p, and in my opinion it's quite a bummer. But take consideration, these are just low power boxes, so if you want to play some wicked Android games, yes, the basic stuff will work just fine, but if you're going to get the more demanding one, there we're going to get some issues. Think about the new Asphalt games. Oh yeah, so the intro doesn't even show EmuELEC on this, and I swear this thing is the EmuELEC device. Alright, so let's take a close look at the main menu first. So what can we play for the people who have no idea like what you can do with this? So basically what I like about it, you have the option to add your games and you can play a lot of stuff like MAME, 16-bit, 8-bit and really old stuff like Atari. You can play handhelds, Game Boys, Lynx, Atari ST, Thomas Wave, the arcade systems, you name it, there is so much stuff you can play with this. But with the cheap boxes like these, most of the time what you're going to get is a mixed performance with N64 for example, Sega Dreamcast and many other systems. So that is something you need to take consideration. If you're going to get yourself like a more expensive box, then you can play most of the games on higher resolutions. And without all the glitching and all the weird stuff. But with EmuELEC we can also configure a lot of stuff we couldn't do with the cheap stuff like the HDMI dongles we have seen before. Video mode, smoothing, you name it, everything can be changed out here. So if you want to see some more information about this, I also did a video about controller configuration if you want to bring new controllers into the system, stuff like that. There's a lot of things you need to know, but if you just want to play, that is possible because the original controls have been reconfigured and you are basically ready to go with this. Okay, so the reason I booted up this game is very simple. This is a quite demanding system and with cheaper boxes you will get some okay gameplay, but you will get a lot of stuttering when it comes to the games like this, because we don't have enough juice to play these games. So already the Thomas Wave is pushing this box to the limit. But even N64 will be an issue with a lot of these cheap boxes, but still a lot of games are just playable. Take consideration, this is a game that will have some struggles sometimes, but in my opinion it's playable. Alright, so I was trying to play this game for some time, but the problem is like it's completely messed up. So when I'm pressing the A button to accelerate, it goes all crazy, so we need to do some reconfiguration. And this is what I mean, is like sometimes you're finding games or controllers not configured correctly. So makes the game freaking unplayable, or you're going to get this. Okay, so let's push this thing to the limit and just see how Sega Dreamcast will run with this game. Because this is a quite demanding game. I can hear in the audio that it has issues now. And this is what I mean with cheap boxes. You can just see that it has issues with more demanding games. Take consideration, some games, again, like with N64, will run just fine. But for me, this is absolutely unplayable. You can just hear it and see it slow down. Quite annoying. Alright, so next up, let's try a different system. And just for fun to see how this shmup is working. So it's less demanding, it's still quite chaotic, and I'm dying every single freaking second. But here you can see that it's got a very good performance. Alright, so next up let's play PlayStation 1. Oh, still one of my favorite systems to play. And it looks amazing, and I don't think this thing is running on higher resolution than native. But still, it's a lot of fun playing these old school games. I noticed that the button mapping is not correct. A little bit of a bummer in my opinion, so there are like things that you need to fix. But when it comes to cheap boxes, even then PlayStation 1 runs just fine. Alright, so the next one in the lineup is this Gamebox 4K Ultra HD game stick. It's not really a stick, they put it on the box. I think they're reusing the box or whatever. It's just a game system with 5,600 games with 3D games. But okay, so it's quite confusing, but basically what they're using is an Android box, or they like rebranding an Android box. So it says here Android television, and that is what we will find inside. But first of all, the first thing that we're going to see, by the way, is like this Gamebox 4K. And I must say that it looks quite interesting. I'm curious if there's a fan in here. Will this light up? And what are we going to get? Okay, here at the side we're going to get USBs, then we're going to get HDMI, AV out, not always this works, RG45 for the connection with Ethernet, then we're going to get an SD card, so let's see how big this bad boy is. This 32 gigabyte, one weird brand I've never heard of, and the input for the power supply. The power supply will be in 12 volt 1 amp, and the model number is the i5, and it has nothing to do with Intel. Okay, what are we going to get more? Then we're going to get one dongle, and the one dongle is for the two controllers, and I'm very glad because we're going to get two USB connections. So if you want to play in 4-player configuration, you only need like 2 sets and 2 dongles, so that's quite interesting. The controller is like the better quality knockoffs. I have seen a lot of these fake controllers or fake PlayStation 2 controllers, and yeah, this is just a basic one with the on off switch. It comes without batteries. You need to put in 2 AAA batteries for a couple of hours playtime. The analog sticks feel quite nice, have this very nice rubber compound. The D-pad feels kind of sturdy, but it's okay. And of course the colorized button, but oh man, this feels really cheap. And not to forget the smell test. It smells very nice. And of course then we're going to get the power supply, card reader, USB 2.0. We're going to get ourselves 2 pieces of paper. I think this explains how you need to add yourself some games, so it seems to be that we have this option. Then we're going to get ourselves a quick guide how you need to connect everything, how everything works, the famous toilet paper manual like always, HDMI cable, and of course the second controller. And in here we're going to get ourselves an extra sticker that says like how to work with the Android mode. Android mode is just basically removing the SD card and switching systems, well, power off. Very important. Alright guys, so let's take a close look at the Android part. So let's unbox my remote. If I know how to unbox it, here it is. And let's use this bad boy. It will use 2 AAA batteries that we'll grab later on. It's a cheap remote, like cheap to the cheap, nothing really special. The thing that we need to do is very simple, is remove the CF card I already did over here. And then we're going to boot it up like always. There's no on and off switch on this freaking thing, so just plug in your power and let's go. Let's see what we're going to get with the Android. So when booting it up, this is what you're going to get is a super simplistic menu. I have personally never seen it like this, but what you can do is like basically go to the Play Store, use Google, stuff like that. Then we're going to get, of course, the option to play some games if you want to. But the most interesting part is when you're going to the applications over here. So we can do a lot of tinkering, and we also installed an APK installer. So basically what we can do with that is installing new games if you don't want to use the Play Store. But of course the Play Store gives you way more possibilities when it comes to playing some games. And if you want to, you can basically install your own programs or emulators and mess around with it and just start tinkering if you really are into stuff like that. But okay, so let's take a close look at the specifications list. And the specs are okay. They are promising. They are not like the more of the high-end stuff that we've seen before. It's still a very cheap old box, 2 GB of RAM, comes with a basic AM logic chip inside. Here you can see like it runs basically with an ARM Cortex A53 that runs on even 1200 MHz. That's even not the fastest clock speed I've seen out there, and in combination with a GPU that is Mali 450 MP. Another thing I find interesting that it is a rooted device. That's not interesting, but it runs on Android 9. Take consideration if you want to play some Netflix, that is not possible, or a low resolution. But let's take a close look at the games and how will they run on this box, because the performance wise of an old box, don't get like excited, think you can play the latest Android games. You're still limited when it comes to some of the games. But the library of Android, even for an old Android box, is still big, so you can play a lot of awesome shmups or other adventure games with the controller. So yeah, actually like it is an Android box turned into a game box, but still they left the dual boot in, so what you can do is play yourself some Android games. I think it's a really cool addition if you just love these Android games. If it's a shmup or a racing game, the games will run just fine on this. But like the latest Asphalt, they were going to get some troubles, because that game is quite demanding for the CPU GPU. But the games I tried were mostly like older games, basic games, and they run all just fine on this. So in combination with basically the dual boot they are using, I think it's a pretty damn awesome machine. And what they mean with the 4K game box, especially I think they're using the 4K or abusing the name, because it's not putting out 4K signal, it's most of the time lower, but more like you can use this box on a 4K television. Okay, so when I did the unboxing, I completely forgot to check what kind of power supply they were giving me. And I wanted to connect it, realizing it doesn't work. Guess what? They gave me a 5-volt power supply. So I'm going to connect in 12 volt because the bag already says here 12 volt. So is that what we're going to connect? This thing is more powerful than we're going to need. So let's boot it up and let's see what we're going to get. But okay guys, so let's see what we're going to get with this device. The menu looks very nice. We don't have any previous videos, but we do have like a tiny picture. But overall, like the performance of this we're going to test out. So we're going to get PlayStation Portable, Sega Naomi, N64, PlayStation, Arcade, Super NES, Game Boy Advance, Mega Drive, NES, Game Boy Color, Neo Geo Pocket, that is something you don't see very often. Let's see, the Sega Game Gear, Famicom, the 32X seems to be on this, some Atari, and yeah, it's of course the one big gigantic list. But overall quite interesting features. Setup has been not be found here, like there's no button whatsoever on the back, and going straight into the favorites. So there's a little bit of a bummer. So that's it. So what you see is basically what you're going to get. And let's take a close look at the search engine, because there is something I really like. So I was searching for Mortal Kombat. You can see like it works very fast. So you can see like basically when you're looking up a game, it will like search very fast when you're typing. Something you don't see with every single system. Another thing I do like is that it will give you like the option like what game you want to play and which platform it is. That is also like an issue I have found with some of these boxes. But pretty damn interesting. But over here we're going to get the option for search, and of course we're having select and back, and when you're pressing the X you can mark a game like favorites that we can find back in the that we basically can find back into the favorite list. Select L2 we will save, and select R2 we will have a quick load, and with start plus double click select, or better said like start select twice, we go back to the main menu. Okay, so let's try Sega Naomi to begin with. I already noticed some glitching in the beginning of this game. So when it comes to low power devices, you will see some issues. If it's not FPS drops, it also will be like glitches. But most part of the game runs just fine. Alright, so next up N64. And N64 on a low power device like this is always the same issues. Some games will run just fine with some minor glitching, but for example Screws in the World, I did notice some logo issues here and there when starting up the game, but then overall we're going to get a quite good performance. So again, it's a mixed bag when it comes to N64 like always. If you want to play these games, yeah, one of the things you can do is like get yourself like a beefy mini PC, and that most of the time will run these devices just fine. But again, it's a budget product with low specs. So this is the best way you're gonna get. Okay, so next up let's play some PlayStation 1. And of course we're going to do the benchmark game Bloody Roar 2. And the reason why is because if this game runs good, most of the games will run just fine. Take consideration, so if you want to play some PlayStation 1 on higher resolutions, you need to have more power. So this thing will run it on just fine native resolution. Alright, so next up PlayStation Portable. I always find it quite interesting to see how they will run on a cheap box like this. And you will see some hiccups here and there, but overall performance is quite good. But yeah, and God of War, the really demanding games will not run on this. Another thing is a little bit of a bummer. So with some Pandora's boxes we have this tweak that we can play with 2 players with PlayStation Portable, but that is not possible with an Android box or a Game Box 4K in this case. So it means you can only play 1-player games. A little bit of a bummer, but that's the things we need to live with stuff like this. Alright, so let's try a main game. Of course we're going to do Mortal Kombat 1 for the benchmark, because this is a super demanding game. And I was surprised to see that it also runs very well on this system. Ah, that was the move I was searching for. Alright, so let's take a close look at this version, the Gamebox 4K Ultra HD Game Stick. Yeah, it's another game stick, or it's actually not a game stick. They put it on the box again. This is also called the B01. Kind of weird, don't know what it says, like why it's for. Nevertheless, there's not a lot of information on it, but let's take a close look at this one, and then we're going to take a close look at the other Gamebox. Okay, so what you're going to get most of the times nowadays, they are like grabbing old TV boxes from the shelf and relabeling them. I don't know if this box ever got sold. Don't know. They added some nice decals like Gamebox on it. At the side we're going to get 2 USB ports. At the back we're going to get an input. It's by the way in 12-volt 1 amp that is needed. And TF card. Let's check it out how big this bad boy is. Comes with a 64 gigabytes, so I'm curious what kind of stuff they added. We have an AV out function. Take consideration that doesn't always work. HDMI and an 1 port or Ethernet connection. That's it. Yeah. So let's take a close look at the box itself, because I'm just curious what I'm going to get. So it's a TV box, so it comes with a remote, also with this weird plug. 12-volt power supply. Yeah, okay. We're going to get. They are smelling quite chemical. And this is like the cheap controllers. 2 of them. Yahoo! HDMI cable. And we're going to get this on this deluxe. It's in English. Toilet paper manual explanation. How does it work? It seems to be that it's running on EMU-ELEC, and it's going to be like a freaking Android box again. But let's boot it up and let's see where actually can play on this thing. This thing wicked, yeah. So the first thing they already messed up, there is no on and off switch whatsoever. So what you need to do is plug it in and it will boot up straight away. So you'll notice like it says Android, what I already mentioned, this thing is just basically like a very old Android box. It comes with the software. It says here EMU-ELEC, and it is more like 3.6 if I've seen it correctly. And if you pop up the card, it will basically boot up in the normal Android menu. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the menu itself. And I must say that the menu, I do like this hyperspin effect. Compatibility, you can say like EMU-ELEC runs a lot of different emulators. But if it's going to run on this device, that is more like a second question that we need to ask ourselves. Because it's a cheap device, it's similar to the Super Console X in a lot of ways. So don't expect a lot of good performance when it comes to the higher end stuff. Sega Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, stuff like that. So here you can change out a lot of settings. Yeah, pressing the wrong button. The menu itself, update download. So if you want to basically update it, it's still running on kind of a weird old version 3.6. I'm running on a 720p moment at the moment. You can change a lot of stuff like aspect ratio, rewind, you name it. But let's take a close look at some, let's say, high-end stuff games. Yeah. Okay, first off, let's start with PlayStation 1. So we've reached the point that a lot of these systems will run PlayStation 1 pretty good or very well. So here you can see like they're running it on the native resolution most of the time. But if you want to enjoy some PlayStation 1, you can do so even on cheaper boxes. The D-pad is not working. Ah, there it is. Just want to check it for sure. But this looks that it is playing the PlayStation 1 games very well. Next up, let's try N64 game. Ah, that is the thing I wanted to see. If it struggles and it glitches out. It doesn't glitch out, but you can see that this game doesn't run well, and this means like N64 will be a mixed bag on this device. I know a lot of people really want to play some N64 games from the childhood, but yeah, it's highly possible that your game will not run. Of course, like because of the mixed bag, there are so many different games that are not running well. It's very hard to, basically to pinpoint which game will run or not. But when you're going to get yourself like a Super Console X PC, or they call it like the Super Console PC editions, they are powerful enough to run the game without any hiccups whatsoever. Wanna take it for a ride? The question remains, how will Sega Dreamcast run? So what we're going to try, we're going to first a 2-dimensional game, and then we're going to try out a 3-dimensional game just to see how good this will run on this cheap Gamebox system. Quick test how to check out the D-pad. D-pad is really sturdy and really awful. So now we're going to test out. Super move. I must say that I'm quite surprised when it comes to the two-dimensional part with Sega Dreamcast. I'm not surprised to see some glitches, because it's still running on a chipset like AIM Logic that will have the problems. Some really weird glitches, but overall like the performance is not bad. Beep 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 beep.
Assume level 1 defense formation.
Hold the B button down to lock on. Release it to fire a homing missile.
Level 1 security door breach. Emergency formation. Intercept intruder.
I must say that I'm surprised by this. Like the three-dimensional games also run very well. This game glitches out like crazy. But I'm surprised, like, I wanted to say like it's actually playable, but it's stuck and it froze. Yeah, that just happened. So when you're looking at PlayStation Portable, this is a system that will never run very good on an, let's say, piece of hardware like this. Two-dimensional stuff, like maybe a Metal Slug game or something else, it's highly possible it runs. Okay, with some minor slowdowns and some glitches. But don't expect to run God of War in this. So this is more like a moment in thinking what the hell is going on, because we have another stick or game box, and the weird thing is like when you're looking at the previous one, I do have like some different, let's say, information. This is like dual system Android TV, and I think it doesn't even have like the same game amounts. Doesn't matter, it's a kind of weird situation here, like not a lot of information. So let's do a quick unboxing. So this is what we're going to get inside the box. So let's talk about the remote, because this is a dual boot system. This thing has not a remote, it's just a really cheap, let's say a very basic remote. Take consideration, we're having Android, it is Android 9, but it is more like a rooted version. So this means we can play full HD Netflix. Just want to point it out, this is just a common problem with these boxes. Of course, the deluxe toilet paper manual with some basic explanations about everything like the controls. Then we're having this very horrible cheap 12-volt 1-amp adapter. I can say that this thing weighs almost nothing. So I really hate when they're doing this. Okay, so even the adapter I'm going to get with this device doesn't even fit that well. In short, HDMI cable, nothing special. We're having the TV box itself. We're also going to do an ETA Prime moment talking about the specifications. And we're going to do a quick overview and the teardown. And the controllers. And the controllers, this is basically the most horrible Chinese smelling controls I have ever seen in my life. Seriously, I have seen my share of shitty controllers that are having this chemical smell, and it's just freaking awful. Oh, this, I think you can hear it on the microphone. It's just so flimsy, and the joystick feels more like there's kind of a gel on it. Ugh. So USB 1 and USB 2. And I already can tell you that there is a big problem with this TV box. We can't use other controllers than these ones. Yeah. So when you take a close look at the specifications, this is getting really close to the Super Console X I've reviewed here on the page, but there are some differences. To begin with, this has the S905W. The CPU is an AIM Logic Cortex A53 1200 MHz quad-core that has a GPU that is a Mali 450 MP. It's a very common GPU nowadays on these cheap boxes. In total has 2 GB of RAM. That is very interesting because most Pandora boxes or Super Console X systems have only 1 GB. It's a dual boot system with Android 9 Pie. It's rooted, so take consideration with Netflix you will have some issues, like you can run it on 1080p or 4K. And the EMU-ALEC is retro-powered on a 32GB SD card, but I have no idea what version because they locked it out and I can't see it. But when you take a close look at this box itself, and especially the specifications, and we're going to do a quick compare with the Super Console X, I can say the information they are giving us in compared with the Super Console X is not bad at all. So the reason why I'm saying not bad at all, it's similar like the Super Console X, but this box is way cheaper and we're having 2GB of RAM. And the Super Console X only has 1. But let's talk about the design itself. The design is quite simple. I don't know if they are using more just an Android box and adding a decal on it like old stock and just adding a new CF card to it with EMU-ALEC. So at the right side we're going to get USB 1 or 2, or basically at the left side, brain fart. Then we're having at the back the input for the 12V 1A. And here we're having the CF card that contains the EMU-ALEC software. Is just a 32GB version, not a big one. AV out, HDMI, and also we can just use a normal Ethernet cable. That is not very common with these boxes. So here it says Android TV box model number D905, made in China. Okay, so let's do a quick teardown. Remove the 4 feet because underneath we're going to get the 4 screws or the 4 Parkers. Hey, it's more like a surprise. It's more like find the Parkers. Nope, there are only 2 of them. Okay, now I know for sure. Let's remove them. Seriously, is this thing only held by freaking 2 screws? That would be very interesting to see. Okay, let's remove this one. I'm lucky that's the only thing I need to remove. Sometimes you need to remove the other stickers like this one. So far I can feel there is nothing else. Okay, let's lift it open and let's see how we're going to get it open. Alright, so it was a pain in the ass to get this thing open, basically because the reason is that they clicked in most parts. There was only 2 screws keeping it together. So that's it what we're going to get inside. So let's open it up, let's lift it out. So there's no extra screws in here. Okay, so lift it very gently. And this is the tiny main board. So for the Wi-Fi capability they have added this antenna. It seems to be that it was normally with double-sided tape, but it's already getting loose. That's not a good thing, of course. So here we're having the chip. Sadly I can't remove it. I'll try to get some force on it. No, so these things are going to get always glued on the main board. We're having the Root 2 RAM chips over here. There's even a QR code on it. It's quite interesting. But this is what you're going to get in the inside. There's not a lot of stuff, just a very tiny PCB. And I could not say that this thing is made in a certain year. Sometime when they're going to create a completely new PCB board, then we're going to get a date on it when it's been produced. But so far I can see there is nothing special about it. So it's highly possible that it's just an old Android box slapped into a new casing. They're reusing old tech. Okay, so when the system is booted up, this is the menu that you're going to get represented with. And the first thing I did notice with this menu is that when you're pressing start, you can't access the start menu. And there's a little bit of a bummer because you're going to need it for reconfiguration, especially with the controllers. So when it comes to the compatibility compared with the Super Console X, basically we're going to get the same stuff like the really old stuff up to Sega Naomi. I did notice that Atomic Wave is not on the system, so I was very curious about it and a little bit bummed out because the Atomic Wave was not running correctly on the Super Console X due of the 1GB RAM, and I wanted to test it out on this device because this one does 2GB of RAM. Okay, so let's take a close look at some games and how are they running on the machine. I do like the menu. Okay, so the old stuff like 8-bit, 60-bit will run just fine on the system, but just want to give you some quick looks into the game and just see how they're running. Oh. Alright, so all the games are on widescreen. Oh my god. It's a freaking nightmare. The Pandora nightmare all over again. And the thing is, you can go into the RetroArch menu. So you're stuck with the widescreen stuff. The game seems to be running just fine, but this is just a big bummer in my opinion. Because they locked everything down, there is no freaking way to adjust the graphical part, the aspect ratio, and etc. Oh, yep, same problem, like all the other ones. So N64 will always be more like a mixed bag. I just specially choose this game because I want to check it out. It still has the same issues, like the same emulator, but yep, it does. Same stuff like the Raspberry Pi 4 and a lot of the Android boxes. Oh boy.
I'll break your face. Round one. Fight.
So I can say with Tekken, it's just more like a mixed bag. When starting up the game, I already noticed that it has a little bit of stuttering. And it depends what kind of game you wanted to play. So take into consideration if you want to play God of War, that will never run on a system like this. Because this is just a low-powered Android box. Games like Tekken 5 do seem to be working, I wouldn't say fine, but they are playable in some ways.
Challenge one. Are you ready? Action! Oh no!
So this makes it absolutely one big jungle. It's a little bit confusing when you're looking at the boxes. They're almost like identical in some certain way. We can even make the game now like search the differences. But you can see like the box is like different kind of materials. It's more like a thicker cardboard. This is more like this like laminated cardboard. So you do have like different, like I'm guessing, manufacturers, because this thing is called the XS5600 and this one is just called the Gamebox B01. But when you're looking them side by side with the software, you do see some differences, and then we have like, that's basically where we get the differences. But in the end, in the main core, we're still going to get the same stuff. So let's do a quick side by side. I just wanted to show you, we're not going to do with the software, but when you're looking at the box itself, I'm guessing it's just the manufacturer that making the same factory making them, only for a different kind of branding. So here it says like Android TV, the D905. This doesn't say a lot, it only says Gamebox B01. So, but when you're looking at the cases itself, they're almost like similar, only in different logos. So I'm guessing it's the same manufacturer making this. And yeah, that's it, you know, it's the same stuff all over again. But okay guys, so then we have like the Gamebox 4K Ultra HD game stick. They're still doing the game stick stuff. Don't know why, because it's not actually a stick. And then we have this version. This also says the game stick, the Gamebox. But the thing is, I already did like a side-by-side comparison, what we're going to also talking about in this video. It's like, This is a great example. This is like one manufacturer making these things, and in the end they are just basically giving us the same stuff. So let's do a quick unboxing and I will show you what I mean. So on top we're going to get ourselves the game system, and I'm just going to be honest, I was slightly disappointed. And the reason is very simple. Like, this is absolutely like an Android box. That's what they're doing. We're also going to do a tear down here. But this Android TV box that they're basically saying here at the bottom, it needs a 12 volt 1 amp power supply. It does have like USB ports at the side. Okay, so they're like freaking USB 2.0, no 3.0 whatsoever, so they're like very old tech. And TV, F slot, or basically an SD card. So they do have like the option for a LAN, AV out, SPIF, HDMI out, and input for the power supply, but this thing feels very lightweighted and plastic fantastic. Inside the box we're going to get ourselves 2 controllers, and yep, they're like the same chemical controls we have seen many times before. But the first thing we need to do is smell it. It's chemical, oh yeah. But how is the feel? So this is not like the worst quality. They're like the ones that are okay. I mean, like, they have like really nice rubber compound on the joysticks, but oh man, you're gonna hear it. Like, nevertheless, like, this is really, it's okay quality. Like, when you're looking at the shoulder buttons, you feel it like this. You can feel it when the, let's say this way, when you're having the controller that have like way too much travel, and they're like very cheap feel, and you're doing basically this movement over the buttons, you can just feel it. So it's okay. The D-pads are kind of sturdy, but in overall quality, it's the same stuff we have seen many times before. And of course, in compartment with 2 AAA batteries. But let's see what we're going to get in here. This is an Android box. We do have like a remote. So then we have, let's see, a keychain. Okay, that keychain is pretty cool. Let's take a close look at the keychain. They give me a free keychain. Oh yeah, this keychain is pretty damn awesome. Okay, so then how are we having the power supply? So there's one thing that is quite concerning, and this is like the Android box. I wonder, it's like, what are we going to get? Because there isn't a TF card in here or an SD card. So this is also something I need to show you. So this thing runs on ME-Alec. That's something you can just basically like download for free. But I don't know why, but they removed the amount of like size of the card. That's kind of weird. Like, why would you do that? Like, nevertheless, you know, let's plug this thing back in. Let's plug it in and let's see what we're going to get. So like I already mentioned before, this is an Android box, and that's basically the first boot up screen you will see over here. So when everything seems to be configured correctly, you will get like the ME-Alec menu, or better said, the software itself. And later on when booting up, you will get the menu. But what I did notice, this is a special modified version, and this theme that they're using looks kind of cool. And also you can see like we do have like the Gamebox intro logo, so they're slightly different and modified when you're looking at an, let's say, your typical ME-Alec you can download for free on the internet. So when booted up, this is what we're going to get when it comes to the menu, or with this Gamebox. So what I think is pretty damn cool with these game boxes, we have so much cool stuff that we can play. For the people just tuning in and stuff like this, basically with an ME-Alec and a basic Android device, you can play up to PlayStation 1 without any hassle. N64 will always be the problem, like a lot of stuff that will not run well or not at all. So N64 will be always the problem. You need to have more power to run that properly on every single, let's say, kind of in resolution, or better said, every single game. Sega Saturn is a new addition to this, absolutely amazing. I think it's pretty damn cool in my opinion. But when you're looking at it, there is so much stuff you can play with these cheap boxes. That's a fact. So for the people wondering what kind of theme they're using the ArtPie theme for it. It's pretty damn cool. I really like it. And over here you can see like it's the ME-Alec AS version 4.3 mod that's basically running on this machine. Another thing I really don't like about this bad boy is that we don't have an on and off switch. A little bit of maybe me being nitpicky about it, but it's something you can sometimes find on these devices and something you don't. And if you need to shut it down, you can do it through the software. So basically what you're going to do is go into the quit over here, and when you choose this, you can shut down the system. But when you want to reboot it, you need to unplug the power every single time, so it's not really convenient. I don't want to focus too much on the old stuff, because that runs just fine on the system like this. I personally really love the side bezels. If you just want to remove it, you can remove it if you want to. Another problem I'm noticing a lot with PlayStation 1, the files that you basically add to it, or basically sometimes they add for you, that we don't have the option to basically have a background song, and they just ripped the file wrong. It's a little bit of a bummer that they do that, because I see this thing coming back every single time you boot up a game. There's no music whatsoever. The soul of the game is lost, and I think that's absolutely a bummer, and a big one. But the overall performance, of course, like I said, like PlayStation 1, runs just fine on this. It is on native resolution, because these boxes are not more powerful enough to run it on high resolutions. Especially when you're running this on a high-end PC, you can get even more better performance and like more like crazy gameplay out of this. For a cheap box, I think it's pretty damn awesome. I'm basically just driving around, you know, like doing nothing. Alright, so next up I wanted to try some PlayStation Portable. I'm just going to be honest, like a lot of games runs like shit. So two-dimensional games like Metal Slug, what you can see on the background, it glitches out. It's still playable, you will find it with maybe in Soul Calibur, it runs fine. But you will have, let's say, some glitches. And some games have some hiccups. But again, if you don't mind, it's just a different way to play. Okay, so next up for the test, I wanted to try out some Mortal Kombat 2. This is the most demanding game they can find on a box like this. Games like Killer Instinct will not run whatsoever, so don't even think about trying that out. But where we do have like a lot of problems with in Pandora's box with games like these, or the cheaper boxes. Dude, I'm just going to punch you in the balls. That is the way how you whip the play. Punch him in the balls, because that's the Scorpion way. Alright, so next up, let's try N64. I already told you, like a lot of stuff will not run very well on this. Great example is of course Cruise in the USA, a very high demanding game. Conquer Bad Fur Day, GoldenEye, stuff like that. And that's basically what happens. It stutters, it glitches, and it has a lot of issues. And these games are just basically unplayable. But don't get me wrong, like a lot of launch titles like Diddy Kong Farting runs just fine. And fine, I mean like in the best way that you can handle like games like those on a cheap Android box. But you get the point. Glitch in the USA. It's time to talk about the AliExpress glitch matrix stuff. You know, I'm always making a joke out of it, but this is absolutely a serious problem. Something I have faced so many times when buying products. And I'm thinking, what is this guy talking about? Finding products on AliExpress can be like a freaking nightmare. Let me know in the comments if you have like some similar issues. And I mean, when you're searching a certain product, when you're getting something in the mail, it looks completely different, or it is something different. So I've bought myself the game books, and I realized I got two of them. But are they the same? That is of course the question of today. They come in different boxes. The first one that came in was this version, the game box. The 4K, you know, I'm not going to even say it anymore, I'm not going to bother. The thing is, like, it came in a completely different box than it was shown on the freaking page. So then we have like the professional game chip, like, you know, those takes on boxes, absolutely hilarious. But the other thing is, like, so we had this thing, and later on, my other version came in. I'm all like, oh crap, did I seriously buy the same product, only on a different name? Because that is what happens. But let's take a close look in the inside. Ooh, there is nothing inside. No, just joking. Let's do a side-by-side comparison with the insides. Okay, so this one comes with some plastic fantastic, of course the game box itself and the controllers. But are we having any differences over here? Of course, same paperwork, stuff like that. So there is one or multiple factories making this same product. I'm guessing they will buy like the controllers from another factory and making a bundle. But let's talk about the controllers first. Is there any difference over here when it comes to the quality? So basically with version 1 and version 2, you don't feel any difference. So I'm guessing they basically like have the same kind of controller, or the manufacturer's just selling one kind of controller. They all smell chemical, they have the same kind of layout. Everything is the same. There is no difference whatsoever, including when it comes to the chemical smell. So when you're looking at the casing, it's identical to each other, absolutely the same. So I just want to look at the bottom. Here we do so I get a like a minimal difference. We're good to get like basically 2 stickers on here and 1 over here. So when you're looking at the stickers, it will have the same voltage, 12 volt 1 amp, and this also have 12 volt 1 amp. But basically when you're looking basically like side by side and you're checking everything, it's absolutely the same. So the thing I wanted to do is just open them up. Alright, so let's do a quick teardown. I find it quite annoying that they, using a cheap case like this, like fully made out of plastic, and there are no screws. I am guessing that I need to use my prior tool, so let's get me one of those. And let's see if we can unbox this freaking thing. Oh man, this thing has some wear and tears, but let's see if we have some space somewhere. Yeah, see, that's always the question, like how can we open this up? We just do it like that. There is no screw attached, and when you're looking at the size of the case, you're thinking we're going to get a like a gigantic PCB in the inside, but it's just another Android box, of course. Alright, so let's get these 2 screws loose. And let's take a close look at what are we going to get in the inside. Oh, almost forgetting one over here. I really love these AliExpress kits. I bought them like some time ago, a couple of them. Super easy. Alright, so let's see, I didn't miss out anyone. No. I can tell you, like, the board is getting really hot after using for a couple of hours. There's something that is basically not letting my freaking thing go. What is it? Ah, there it is. Okay, wow. Okay. So, yeah, so I don't know why they use this. Why do they want to transfer the heat from this PCB to the plastic? It is transferring something, but wow, it's absolutely hot, man. Like, this thing is like sticky and freaking hot as it can be. Oh man, what a mess, I can tell you that. Let's see if we can remove this over here. I always need to be very careful. Oh, there we go. Okay, so they just slapped this on here. So what a mess is this? Oh boy. Aha, so that explains, for example, the Sega Saturn situation. So I already can see it's like I removed it, but I basically removed it for nothing. And the reason why, because if we're going to remove this, I think we will see what kind of chip it is. Let's clean it up a little bit. Let's clean it up a little bit more. So here you can see indeed is that this is the S905L model. I don't know if you can see it on the camera because it's filthy and you need to have a kind of a reflection to see it. But the S905L is basically the chip they're using. There's an old school quad core. It's similar like the Super Console X. And to be honest, like when you're looking at the modified version with Sega Saturn, what I understand of normally it won't run on these kind of very weird old boards. That's kind of interesting, to be honest. So we do have like the storage chip over here, 2 RAM chips. So yeah, it's nothing really fancy, to be honest. Like when you're looking at this over here, especially when you're looking at the production date, you can see like this is the S905. It has been produced in a completely different year, 2016. So this thing is pretty damn old. So this is just a great way of reusing old technology. So it's better than throwing it away, of course, but I just wanted to say like this is what they're doing. This is the same stuff that we're seeing with the Super Console X, only a different name, different image, and the same yada yada. It also explains why a lot of problems like with PSP is still the same like with the Super Console X. Before I go to put it together, I just briefly want to talk about the cooling. So normally what you need to do is putting the cooling block on here. That basically gives you like the best cooling solution for your CPU, GPU situation. But what they did is like slapping that on here and using this thing, the thermal paste, for basically transferring it to the plastic. Like, wow. Just wow. Alright, so let's open up the second box. Yeah, and basically what we're going to get is the same kind of shell. So let's get myself the prior tool and let's open it up. And we do have like a difference in the SD card, by the way. 905. And this is not your typical X3. And what I mean with the X3, for the people who don't know, like it's more like the more powerful version of the S905 series, and it has like a lot of stuff that we can play with it. Unfortunate if you have like a cheaper box, a cheaper chip, that sounds kind of funny, cheaper chip, you're going to get not a great performance. Okay, let's remove the micro SD card before I'm going to ruin it. And let's rip this thing out. Oh man, like it's kept in hold in place by a couple of these. Getting them out is like the big question. How do I do this without destroying the freaking thing? There he is. Okay, so when it comes to the cooling, it's absolutely garbage. Like, there is not even like a cooling element on it, nothing at all. But I wonder, like, is this thing made brand new? It looks like this is like old technology, especially when you're looking at the Wi-Fi antenna. This is something I haven't seen before. I think I haven't seen it before when it comes like the newer models anymore. So yeah, so what it did is like having this gigantic thermal paste pad on it that connects to the plastic. Yeah, plastic will not cool down the chip. You know, like when it comes to this piece of crap, like these weird looking Android boxes sometimes, they mess it up big time. Let's see if we can remove it. Nope, absolutely no way to remove it. Very good, that doesn't even matter, you know, like, oh boy. Alright, so let's clean it up. And let's see what we're going to get underneath, if we can even see it. Because there's so much scrap on this. It's not even funny anymore. But I need to figure out if I'm having like something like a passive cooling block in my storage that I can put on here, because I'm not going to boot it up as is. Alright, so I've cleaned it up, or so far I can do it. And there's still a little bit of a sticky up that I also need to remove, but I think it's very hard to read. But this is the S905L model. A little bit of a bummer because it's a very old chipset. Funny thing is also, when you're looking over here to the specification, you can see this board has been made in 2016. But okay, so I have these like tiny passive cooling elements laying around for Pi. Don't use them anymore, so let's basically use it on this box, so we at least have any little bit of cooling on the chips, because this is better than nothing. So that's basically what I needed to do with the second one. Okay, another difference that we're going to get is the MBLX piece of software. This is basically why we're going to get the biggest difference. This thing runs on kind of a weird MBLX modified version that is called Gamebox. So when booted up, this is what we're going to get when it comes to the menu, or with this Gamebox. So what I think is pretty damn cool with these game boxes, we have so much cool stuff that we can play. For the people just tuning in and stuff like this, basically with an MBLX and a basic Android device, you can play up to PlayStation 1 without any hassle. N64 will always be the problem, like a lot of stuff that will not run well or not at all. But because we have the same kind of main boards, the emulation performance will be exactly the same with both versions. But let's take a close look at the other software, because we do get some interesting things there. Okay, so when let's boot up the second one, and what you're going to see over here, we do get the MBLX, that's basically what all of these TV boxes are running on. But we did get like a completely different menu. Okay, it's a theme, so it's not like that interesting maybe. But when you're looking at everything, like the language, like the theme, everything was completely different with this one. So what is quite interesting, that we do have like the same kind of box, but we have like different stickers. The way how they assemble it is different box. And also when you're looking at the software, also here we're going to get differences. So it seems to be, when you're looking at them side by side, it's a glitch in the matrix, or better said, in the AliExpress matrix. But what we're going to get is basically two different boxes, but mainly it's going to be the software part. The conclusion is that we do have like all kinds of game boxes nowadays. If you want to play some old school 8-bit, 16-bit, these things are just capable of doing it. When you're going to look into the PlayStation 1 part, sometimes you even find some problems. I think it's quite interesting, at the same time also quite annoying. They made so many of these freaking game boxes. Let me know in the comments which one do you think is pretty damn cool. I think some of them have like some cool features. But the major problem we're having is sometimes, like with this golden game box, it's absolutely garbage when it comes to the overall quality and just the finishing touch when it comes to the system. Like, who puts like a thermal pad on a piece of plastic? Like, what were they thinking? But in the end, most of these things are actually the same. Some have like some minor adjustment in the software, but in the end we can just play the same things all over again. yeah, I just want to give you a quick overview of these boxes, actually like the game box systems, or the non-branded, you can call them all kinds of things. I want to thank you for watching, consider subscribing, let me know what you think of it, and it would be great to see you in the next video.